Does this bother you? It should bother you. It bothers me sometimes when I sit quietly and think about it too much. Right now, there is a cable plugged into the wall behind you. Maybe it's charging your phone. Maybe it's running your laptop, and you think you know what's happening inside that cord. Electrons are flowing through the copper wire, carrying energy from the wall to your device, like water through a pipe. That story is wrong. Not a little wrong. Not simplified for beginners, wrong. Fundamentally, completely, 100% wrong. The energy powering your device right now is not flowing through the wire. It never has. Not once. Not ever. The energy is flowing through the completely empty space around the wire. I know. Your brain is fighting this already. We are primates. We want to hold the stuff. We want the energy to be a physical fluid inside the copper. We want electrons to be tiny marbles carrying backpacks of energy, marching single file through a hollow pipe. We want the universe to be mechanical. But nature does not care what we want. Nature is much more elegant and much more weird. Here's what's actually happening. That battery in your phone, it's not pushing energy through the wire. It's more like a radio tower, broadcasting energy into the space around it. The battery creates a massive swirling electromagnetic field that fills the air around the cord. The wire? The wire is just a guide, a boundary condition, a track for an invisible ghost train. Imagine you could see electromagnetic fields. Your entire room would be glowing right now. Energy rushing through the air at nearly the speed of light, flowing along the outside of every cable, every cord, every wire. And once you accept that the energy is in the fields, not in the wires, your whole view of the universe has to radically change. Let me show you. To really melt your mind, let us scale this up. Let us do a thought experiment. Picture this. You have a battery and a light bulb sitting right next to each other on your desk, 6 inches apart. But instead of connecting them with a short piece of wire, you run the wire all the way around the moon. 240,000 miles out. 240,000 miles back. 500,000 miles of copper looping around the moon and back, just to connect a battery to a light bulb sitting 6 inches apart. Now you close the switch. How long does it take for the light bulb to turn on? If energy flows through the wire, the way you were taught, like water through a pipe, the answer should be a long time. The electrical signal in copper travels at roughly 2/3 the speed of light. 500,000 miles of wire. Do the math. That is about 2.5 seconds, minimum. So your intuition says, a few seconds, maybe more. The actual answer? The bulb turns on almost instantly, not in seconds, not in milliseconds, in nanoseconds, a tiny fraction of a heartbeat. The light comes on before the electrical signal inside the wire has even made it past your front door. 500,000 miles of wire, and the energy arrives in nanoseconds. How? Because the energy does not travel through the wire to the moon and back. The energy crosses your desk, through 6 inches of completely empty air, through the electromagnetic field between the battery and the bulb. That field propagates at the speed of light, 6 inches at light speed, nanoseconds. The energy was never going to the moon. The energy was always going to take the shortcut, straight across your desk, through nothing but empty space. The wire to the moon? It is a boundary condition, a guide rail, a fence post for an invisible river. But the river itself, the actual energy, flows through the air, not through the copper. Let that land. 500,000 miles of physical copper wire stretching all the way to the moon and back. and the energy just quietly steps across 6 inches of air on your desk. The physical stuff does not matter. The invisible field does. This is not a thought experiment that only works on paper. This is what Maxwell's equations have been screaming at us since 1865. The energy is in the field. It was always in the field. And once you see it, really see it, you realize this is exactly how a radio works. Think about a radio. Not the device, the process. At a radio station, there is an antenna, and all that antenna does is wiggle electrons back and forth. That is it. Electrons oscillating in a metal rod. But when those electrons wiggle, they create a disturbance in the electromagnetic field around them. And here is the part that should keep you up at night. That disturbance detaches. It snaps off from the antenna and flies away. Through the air, through space, through nothing. At the speed of light. No wire, no pipe. No physical connection of any kind. Just a ripple in an invisible field, carrying energy and information across the city, into your car, and out of your speakers. That is radio. And that is exactly what your phone charger is doing, except with a wire acting as a guide. Now scale it up. Starlight. Think about starlight for a moment. A star in the Andromeda galaxy, 2.5 million light-years away, wiggles its electrons during a nuclear fusion reaction. That wiggle creates a ripple in the electromagnetic field. That ripple detaches from the star and travels through 2.5 million light-years of absolutely empty space. No wire, no medium, no stuff. Just a field disturbance, propagating through the vacuum for 2.5 million years, until it hits the retina of your eye, and you see a tiny dot of light in the night sky. 2.5 million years of travel. Through nothing. Delivered to your eye by an invisible field. This is not a special case. This is the rule. Everything, light. Heat, radio waves, X-rays, the glow of your phone screen right now, is the electromagnetic field delivering energy through space. Everything in the universe that you have ever seen, felt, or experienced is fields interacting with fields. And here is where it gets genuinely disturbing. You are sitting in a chair right now. You feel the chair pressing against you, solid, physical, real. You have never actually touched that chair. Not once. Not ever. The atoms in your body and the atoms in the chair never make contact. They cannot. The outer electron clouds of your atoms repel the outer electron clouds of the chair's atoms through, you guessed it, the electromagnetic field. You are hovering. Right now. Floating on an invisible electromagnetic mattress, about 1 angstrom, 1/10,000,000th of a meter, above the surface of your chair. You have never touched anything in your entire life. Not a single object, not another person, not the ground beneath your feet. Every handshake, every hug, every kiss. You have never actually made contact with anyone. You have only ever felt the force of invisible electromagnetic fields pushing back against you. The physical world you think you live in is the field world. It always has been. Everything is fields. That is not poetry. That is physics. So why do we even use wires at all? If the energy is in the space, why bother? Seriously. If the electromagnetic field carries all the power, if the energy is already flying through the air at the speed of light, why do we string millions of miles of expensive copper cable across the planet? Why not just broadcast everything wirelessly? Because human beings are greedy, and we want control. Without wires, that energy spreads everywhere. Picture dropping a massive boulder into a perfectly calm lake. Ripples go in every direction. Beautiful, but useless. The energy thins out. It fades. By the time it reaches your house, there is nothing left to power a light bulb. We do not want ripples going everywhere. We want a river going exactly where we tell it to go. That is what a wire does. The wire does not carry the energy. The wire shapes the field. It concentrates the electromagnetic energy into a tight, invisible stream running along the outside of the copper. And here is the image that should permanently rewire your brain. The wire is a pipe. But the pipe is on the inside, and the water is on the outside. Picture that. A hollow pipe with water flowing along the outside surface. The copper is the pipe. The energy is the water, and the water is on the wrong side. That is your electrical cord. That is every power line you have ever seen strung across a highway. The metal is in the middle, doing almost nothing. The actual power is flowing through the air, hugging the outside surface, guided by the geometry of the conductor. Now, I know what you are thinking. If the energy is outside the wire, why do I get shocked when I touch a bare wire? Good question. Best question, actually. You are not intercepting energy that was inside the wire. There was never any energy inside the wire to intercept. What happens is this. Your body becomes a new boundary condition. You are rearranging the geometry of the field. When you stick your finger into the space around a live wire, you give the electromagnetic field a new path, a shortcut, through your body. The field was already flowing through the space around the wire. Your finger did not steal energy from the copper. Your finger gave the field permission to dive through you instead of the intended load. The energy enters your body from the outside, not from inside the wire, from the field. Even getting shocked is a field phenomenon. Even the pain proves the point. This is the great, profound joy of physics. You start with something completely ordinary. A light switch, a plastic plug, a copper wire running through your wall. Something so mundane, you have never given it a second thought. You ask one simple question. How does it work? And if you are intellectually honest, if you really follow the mathematics, if you strip away every comfortable assumption, if you refuse to accept a hand-wavy explanation that sounds right but explains nothing, you end up here, standing in front of a universe that makes no sense at all. Your common sense tells you the world is made of solid objects bumping into each other. Balls rolling down ramps, gears turning other gears, pipes carrying fluids. But the universe is not made of solid objects. The universe is a symphony of invisible tensions, vibrations in the geometry of space, propagating influences that you cannot see, cannot touch, cannot hold in your hand, but can precisely calculate down to 12 decimal places. You are swimming in this right now. Every time you flip a switch, you are bending the electromagnetic field in your room. Every time you send a text message, you are launching a ripple into the field that propagates at the speed of light through walls, through air, through the skulls of everyone around you. You are manipulating fundamental forces of nature every single day, and you never even noticed. We do not entirely know why the universe follows these mathematical rules. We do not know why there are electromagnetic fields at all. We just know how they behave, and they behave in a way that is utterly fantastic and wildly counterintuitive. That is the beauty of physics. Not comfort, not simplicity, truth. If this changed the way you see the world, even a little, Share this with someone else. We all need to be reminded of how strange, how complex, and how deeply beautiful reality actually is. Because the next part of this story gets even stranger. Go turn on a light switch. Just flip it on. The light comes on instantly. Now I want you to go over to the lamp and hold the wire. Feel the plastic casing. You probably think you know exactly what is happening inside that cord. You have been taught a story, a very comfortable, very intuitive story. Here is the story. The wire is a hollow pipe. The electrons are tiny microscopic marbles. You flip the switch. The marbles rush down the wire, carrying little backpacks of energy. They arrive at the filament. Drop the energy off. The filament heats up, and the marbles rush back through the other wire to get more. It makes perfect sense. It is completely intuitive, and it is absolutely 100% wrong. Let us destroy it with one number. If electrons carry the energy, they must be racing through that wire at incredible speeds. Right? The light turns on instantly, so the electrons must be flying. The actual speed of electrons in a copper wire, the drift velocity, is about 1 millimeter per second. 1 millimeter per second. That is slower than a snail, slower than honey dripping off a spoon, slower than the hour hand on a clock. At that speed, it would take an individual electron hours just to crawl from the wall outlet to the lamp sitting on your desk. Hours. Yet the light turns on instantly. Now, I can already hear you thinking, maybe the first electron pushes the second one, which pushes the third, like a long train of solid marbles in a tube. The push propagates instantly, even if each marble barely moves. Clever. But even if that were true, even if the push rippled down the wire at the speed of light, it still does not explain the sheer amount of energy arriving at the filament. You need enough energy to heat metal until it glows blindingly white. A gentle nudge between nearly stationary electrons does not deliver that kind of power. The electrons are not carrying the power. The copper wire is not carrying the power. The energy does not flow through the wire at all. The wire is practically a distraction. The real energy, the actual power that lights your room, charges your phone, runs your entire civilization, is flowing through the completely empty space around the wire. Right now, the plastic cord plugged into your phone, the air surrounding that cord is packed with invisible electromagnetic energy rushing forward at nearly the speed of light. Not inside the copper. Outside. In the air. In the nothing. Your physics teacher did not tell you this. Your textbook did not explain it. Every diagram you have ever seen of current flowing through a circuit was showing you the wrong picture. Not because teachers are lying, because the truth is so counterintuitive, why so deeply weird, that most people never learn it. And it gets worse. Because this is not a modern discovery. This is not some fringe theory from the internet. Human beings figured this out over 150 years ago, and the story of how they figured it out is wonderful. Before we break your reality completely, make sure to subscribe. This is not just physics. This is how the world actually works. Let us step back. We need to look at how human beings figured this out. Because the history of this discovery is just wonderful. Michael Faraday. A guy who did not know much fancy mathematics, not a Cambridge professor, not a wealthy gentleman scientist with a private laboratory. Faraday was a bookbinder's apprentice. No money, no connections, no formal scientific education, but obsessively, relentlessly curious. He talked his way into a job at the Royal Institution in London. essentially as a lab assistant, washing bottles and sweeping floors. And in his spare time, he started experimenting. One day, in his laboratory, Faraday was playing with magnets and coils of copper wire. He pushed a magnet through a loop of wire, and something happened. A tiny jiggle of electricity in the wire. He pulled the magnet out. Another jiggle. Push the magnet in, electricity appears. Pull the magnet out, electricity appears. Hold the magnet still, nothing. The electricity only showed up when the magnet was moving. But here's the thing that should have kept every physicist awake at night. The magnet was not touching the wire. There was physical space between them. Empty air, nothing connecting them. How does the magnet tell the electrons in the wire to start moving? What is the mechanism? What carries the message across the gap? This is the same problem that drove Newton crazy with gravity. Action at a distance. Something over here affecting something over there with nothing in between. Imagine you are standing across the room from me. I wave my hand, and suddenly you feel a physical push on your chest. No stick, no string, no jet of air. Just my hand waving 10 feet away and your body lurching forward. You would think it was magic or insanity. But that is exactly what happens when a magnet moves near a wire. Something invisible reaches across the gap and shoves the electrons. Faraday could not accept this. His brain demanded a physical mechanism. He refused to believe in magic at a distance. So he invented something. He called them lines of force. Imagine invisible rubber bands stretching out from the magnet in every direction, filling the space around it, alive with tension. When you move the magnet, you are sweeping those rubber bands across the wire. The rubber bands catch the electrons and drag them along. No action at a distance. No magic. The space itself is filled with something real, something physical, that carries the force. Faraday could feel them. In his mind, the space around every magnet, every charged object was not empty. It was alive, buzzing with invisible tension, humming with energy that no one else could see. He drew pictures of these lines of force, beautiful sweeping curves radiating out from magnets, looping through space, filling every corner of emptiness with structure and tension. And the academic elite thought Faraday was naive. These lines of force are just pictures in the head of a man who cannot do calculus, they said. Useful for intuition, perhaps, but not real physics, not rigorous, not mathematics. They were wrong, dead wrong. Because then came James Clerk Maxwell, and Maxwell had the mathematical chops. He was a genius of the highest order, the kind of mind that comes along once a century. James Clerk Maxwell took Faraday's intuitive rubber bands, those invisible lines of force that the academic elite had dismissed as pictures in a naive man's head, and he translated them into rigorous, beautiful mathematical equations. And what he found stunned him. Faraday's lines of force were not just pictures. They were not just a useful visualization for a man who could not do calculus. They were real, physical, measurable. We call them fields today. The electric field, the magnetic field, two invisible structures permeating every cubic centimeter of the universe. But Maxwell discovered something even more extraordinary. These fields could vibrate. They could ripple, like waves on a pond. An oscillating electric field would generate a magnetic field. That magnetic field would generate another electric field. Back and forth. Back and forth. A self-sustaining wave, propagating through completely empty space, needing no medium, no wire, no stuff of any kind. So Maxwell calculated the speed of these waves. He took one constant from electricity, the permittivity of free space. He took another constant from magnetism, the permeability of free space. Two numbers from two completely separate branches of physics that had nothing obvious to do with each other. He combined them. And the number that fell out of his equations was 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. Exactly, precisely, to the decimal, the speed of light. Maxwell stared at that number. He checked it again, and again. Two constants from electricity and magnetism mashed together, and out pops the speed of light. It could not be a coincidence. It was not a coincidence. Light, the thing that lets you see, the thing that crosses the universe, the thing that carries the image of distant stars into your eye, is just a jiggling of electric and magnetic fields. Nothing more, nothing less. A ripple in the invisible field, set free. This was the moment. The moment human beings realized that light, the most fundamental thing in our experience of reality, is just the same invisible field that carries power along your lamp cord, set free from the wire, propagating on its own through the void. But here is the profound shift, the point where the universe stops being solid. Before Maxwell, people thought the fields were just a convenient mathematical trick, a shorthand, a way to describe how matter interacts with matter without worrying about the details. After Maxwell, we had to face the truth. The field is the primary reality. The field is the real stuff of the universe. The copper wire, the iron magnet, your fingers, the electrons, they are the secondary things. They are just the little knots that make the fields wiggle. The energy, the momentum, the actual physical reality of any situation is sitting out there in the invisible, intangible field, tied not in the stuff, in the space between the stuff. And then came Richard Feynman, 100 years later. And Feynman took this idea to its most disturbing conclusion. Richard Feynman was not the kind of physicist who hid behind equations. He was the kind who grabbed you by the collar and forced you to look at what the equations were actually saying, even when what they said was uncomfortable, especially when it was uncomfortable. Feynman had a principle. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Maxwell proved that fields are real, that fields carry energy, that light is a field vibration. But Feynman asked the next question, the question that made even physicists squirm. If the fields are the primary reality, then what is matter? What are electrons? What are protons? What are atoms? What are you? His answer came through quantum electrodynamics, QED, the most precisely tested theory in the history of science. Accurate to 11 decimal places, more precise than measuring the distance from New York to Los Angeles to within the width of a single human hair. And QED's answer was devastating. Every interaction you see in the universe, every push, every pull, every chemical reaction, every nerve signal in your brain, every beat of your heart, is really just fields exchanging tiny packets of energy. We call them photons. The electron in the wire is not a little marble. It is a knot in the electromagnetic field, a localized vibration, a standing wave in nothingness. The proton in the nucleus is not a solid ball. It is a more complicated knot, made of quarks, which are themselves vibrations in other fields. You, sitting there watching this video, are not a collection of solid atoms stacked together like tiny Lego bricks. You are a symphony. a symphony of interacting quantum fields, vibrating in patterns so complex and so stable that they convinced themselves they were solid. Feynman found this disturbing. Not because the math was complicated, the math was elegant. Not because QED was uncertain, QED was the most certain theory ever written. He found it disturbing because it was true. And the truth demands that you abandon every comfortable picture you have of what reality is made of. The marble, the billiard ball, the tiny solar system with electrons orbiting the nucleus. All of it. Gone. Replace it with fields. Invisible, intangible, mathematically precise fields, interacting, vibrating, exchanging energy through empty space. That is what you are made of. That is what everything is made of. So when we say electricity does not flow through wires, Feynman would say we are not going far enough. The wire itself is just another pattern in the field. The electrons inside the wire are just another set of vibrations. The entire physical universe that you think you can see and touch and hold is the field talking to itself. The math does not lie. The fields are real. The solid world, the one you grew up in, the one you trust, the one that feels so certain under your feet, is the illusion. And the invisible, intangible, utterly alien field is what is actually there. But how do we prove that energy flows outside the wire? There is a beautiful, precise mathematical answer, and it involves crossing your fingers. So let us go back to your desk lamp. You flip the switch. What actually happens in the deepest layer of reality? At the power plant, there is a generator. That generator creates an electric field. But because charges are moving, it also creates a magnetic field. Two fields, both invisible, both filling the space around every wire in the circuit. Now, there is a very beautiful, to use very subtle mathematical rule in physics. It was discovered by a man named John Henry Poynting. We call it the Poynting vector. And it tells you exactly where the energy is flowing, in any situation. No ambiguity, no interpretation, pure mathematics. Here is how it works. Hold up your right hand. Stick your index finger straight out. That is the electric field. Now point your middle finger sideways at a right angle. That is the magnetic field. Your thumb, pointing straight up, is the direction the energy actually travels. Perpendicular to both, always. The energy flows in whatever direction is perpendicular to both the electric field and the magnetic field at that point in space. That is the Poynting vector. That is the crossed finger trick. Now let us apply it to the wire of your lamp. The wire is a conductor, full of electrons that can move around freely, like a chaotic swarm of bees. When you connect it to the generator, an electric field is set up along the length of the wire. That field pushes the electron swarm, making them slowly drift. That is the electrical current. But because there is a moving current, the laws of nature demand that a magnetic field is created circling around the outside of the wire, like the rings of Saturn. So look at what we have. An electric field running parallel to the wire. A magnetic field wrapping around it in circles. Two fields, perpendicular to each other. Now use the crossed finger trick. Calculate the Poynting vector. Find where the energy is actually flowing. The result is completely shocking. The mathematical arrow for the energy flow points strictly parallel to the outside surface of the wire. Not inside. Not through the copper. Through the empty air surrounding the wire. The energy is not flowing inside the copper. The energy is flowing in the completely empty space outside the wire. There's the air in your bedroom, the actual air between you and the lamp cord, is packed with invisible electromagnetic energy rushing forward at nearly the speed of light. The wire is just a track, a guide, like the steel rails for a train. But the train itself is an invisible ghost, made of pure field energy, flying through the air around the rails. The wire does not carry the power. The wire directs the power. But wait. You should be asking a question right now. If the energy is flowing through the air outside the wire, how does it get into the light bulb? How does the filament get hot? This is where the geometry gets absolutely beautiful. As the field energy flows through the space around the wire, it reaches the bulb. The tungsten filament inside has high electrical resistance. It is tough to push through, like a crowded hallway. The electric field has to push incredibly hard on the electrons to force them through this microscopic bottleneck. And because it is pushing so hard, the geometry of the field lines distorts. They bend, slightly inward, toward the surface of the filament. Recalculate the Poynting vector with those bent field lines. The arrow changes direction. It stops flowing parallel to the wire. It turns inward. The energy literally dives from the empty space into the metal. From the outside in, the invisible electromagnetic field that was traveling through the air crashes into the electrons in the filament, making them jiggle furiously. That furious, chaotic jiggling of atoms is what we call heat. The filament gets so hot it glows blindingly white. The energy came from the empty space, crashed into the matter from the outside, and turned into light. That is not a metaphor. That is not a simplification. That is exactly what the Poynting vector, the mathematics, says is happening every time you flip a switch. And this principle, energy living in the fields, not in the wires, it powers everything around you right now. Right now, your phone is swimming in fields. Wi-Fi. Think about what Wi-Fi actually is. There is a little router sitting in your house. Inside that router, electrons are wiggling back and forth in a tiny antenna. That wiggling launches electromagnetic waves, the exact same kind of field energy we have been talking about. Through your walls, through your furniture, through the air, and into your phone. No wire. The signal passes through wood, through plaster, through your skull. Because it is a field, not a thing. Fields do not need doors. Wireless charging. Your phone sits on a small pad. The pad creates an oscillating magnetic field. That field reaches through the plastic case of your phone, enters a coil inside, and induces a current. Energy jumps from the pad to your phone through nothing but empty air and an invisible field. Same principle, same physics, same Poynting vector. 5G towers. Electrons jiggle in an antenna on a rooftop. Fields launch through the city. Your video loads. Your call connects. Your map updates. All carried by invisible ripples in the electromagnetic field. The same field Faraday imagined, Maxwell proved, and Feynman deepened. MRI machines in hospitals. They use incredibly powerful magnetic fields to reach inside your body, through your skin, through your muscle, through your bones, and interact with the hydrogen atoms in your water. The fields pass through you, bounce back a signal, and a computer builds a picture of your organs. No scalpel, no incision, just fields. Every single one of these technologies works because energy does not need wires. Energy lives in the fields. We just finally learned how to aim it. Think about that arc. From Faraday's rubber bands in a basement laboratory, to Maxwell's equations on a chalkboard, to Feynman's quantum fields, to the phone in your pocket. 200 years. From a confused bookbinder's apprentice waving magnets through copper loops to Wi-Fi. Same field, same physics, same invisible reality that has been here all along, carrying energy through the empty space around every wire, every antenna, every star in the universe. So the next time you flip a switch, remember. The light does not turn on because electrons rushed through a copper pipe. The light turns on because an invisible electromagnetic field, filling the completely empty space around the wire, crashed into the filament from the outside and set it on fire. We started with a question. Does this bother you? It should. Because everything you thought you knew about how electricity works was wrong. The energy does not flow through the wire. It flows through the nothing around the wire. A moon's worth of copper cannot outrun 6 inches of empty air. Yet the electrons crawl at 1 millimeter per second, while the fields fly at the speed of light. Faraday felt the invisible tension in the empty space around his magnets. The academic elite laughed at him. Maxwell translated those feelings into mathematics and accidentally discovered what light is. And Feynman took it to its most disturbing conclusion. The solid world you think you live in is the illusion. The invisible, intangible fields are the primary reality. You have never touched anything in your entire life. Every handshake, every hug, just fields pushing against fields. You are not a collection of solid atoms. You are a symphony of quantum fields, vibrating in patterns so stable they convinced themselves they were real. And right now, your phone is swimming in those fields. Wi-Fi, 5G, wireless charging, MRI, all built on one single truth that a bookbinder's apprentice felt 200 years ago. The space is not empty. The space is everything. That is what Feynman found disturbing, not the math. The math was elegant, the truth. If this changed how you see the world, even a little, tell me in the comments. What clicked for you? What still feels wrong? Subscribe if you want more physics explained the way Feynman would have explained it. No memorization, just understanding. And I will see you in the next one.